Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending today's third and final fireside chat. Um, just before we get into it, just a quick introduction. I'm Joe Shasteen, the Global Manager of Advanced Analytics at RetailNext. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with RetailNext, we are the leading advanced analytics platform for traffic and retail. We help our retailers consolidate data across multiple platforms in order to provide solutions that enable them to generate multiple ROI and profitability based on the metrics. We've worked with over 500 different retailers across 100 different countries in order to help them develop the power of 1%, which demonstrates what that 1% increase in conversion can do for overall profitability within our retail environment. So I'm very excited today to have Corinne Suarez with me. Corinne, if you wouldn't mind giving a little bit of an introduction.
Hi, my name's Corinne. I work for, as Joe said, Marine Layer. Really happy to be here. I've been with the brand about a year and a half, and it's been a really fun ride, I'll say. We're a really cool California lifestyle brand. We have a strong presence online, and we're scaling across the U.S. So right now we have 57 stores, two of which are pop-ups. So it's been really great.
We're going to talk a little bit about the pop-ups later, but I wanted to start kind of going back, a few years to, Marine Layer has a great history in California, great brand presence. But as you've started to expand that outside of California, can you talk a little bit about, some of the unique challenges that you've had bringing that brand across, the country into different areas, as well as, what has been some of the goals of kind of having data-driven solutions for making the decisions on where your next markets are going to be and, being able to leverage the data in order to make those successes?
I think a couple things come to mind when I think about branching out of California because we are really deep rooted in California. Again, we're a lifestyle brand, super cool and casual. But one of the biggest things is culture. We have a really fun culture. It's a little bit whimsy, kind of snarky. And to be able to replicate that across the US isn't easy. So when you're training new teams and they're really learning about the brand, that's hard. I think the other thing we've come across is remote stores. So we call a remote store a single store market. That's been difficult just from the fact of people don't know our brands. They don't know the roots of our brand. They don't know how we started, that everything's soft and amazing. So really getting that across to the customer has been a bit of a challenge.
What are some of the strategies that you've been implementing to, try to deal with that, to try to get your brand awareness out there in those new markets where, you don't have that in California, right, where it's very clear? What are some of the strategies you've implemented, whether using traffic data, other data sources to really drive that and kind of build up that customer base outside of your home market?
We work really closely with our marketing team to really look at our customer profile, our base. We obviously analyze traffic. I think one of the special things about us is we are a smaller brand, so we can be really nimble. And if we find an opportunity, we can go after it really fast. Unlike other brands, it's kind of bureaucracy and all that good stuff, but we have a small, mighty team. And we can attack it really well.
Kind of along those lines, right? So you've chosen RetailNext to be your partner as you kind of expanded with this. So what have been some of the capabilities and things that you've looked at when you've been, working with traffic or other sort of data sources that have kind of enabled you to, want to make sure you're rolling out with RetailNext in these different environments so that you ensure you have the data you need?
I think it's the ability to test and learn. Again, we can pilot things really easily, and we can look at the metrics that RetailNext provides, and we can iterate and learn and be really fluid with the brands. There's a performance comparison, right? Like we have two stores that had both genders in them, and based on the analysis we did on the business, we were like, and the traffic and our customer profile, we decided to make the men's only store. So there's a lot of data and analytics that we glean from RetailNext that really help us compile a strategy for the go forward.
Previously in some of our other conversations, you mentioned kind of store types and changing up, where you were looking to place some of your new stores, street front versus mall. Could you talk a little bit about some of the data that you've been using to kind of make those decisions onto where the stores will be placed in your new city?
Marine Layer was, we've been around for 15 years, going on 16. Again, we're scaling. I think we had to look at like what got us here isn't going to get us there, right? And so we were in neighborhoods, and neighborhoods are great, but you have like a really confined customer pattern, traffic. So we decided about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, to start going into bigger malls and bigger centers. And with that becomes more traffic, right? A different customer base, you get tourists. So there's a reach that's a bit different than when you're in a neighborhood. So we're able to look at our traffic, we're able to look at the data that goes along with that, also passerby traffic. We understand with our passerby cameras, like it provided a big opportunity for us to look at everybody who wasn't coming in and how can we enhance from our windows, our storefront, from inside our box visually, how can we become more appealing and to really appeal to the customer from an experiential standpoint.
Kind of along those lines from the experiential standpoint, and you mentioned kind of some of the newer pop-ups. Could you give a little bit of the history of kind of the pop-up or kind of how you're developing those new locations and, what you were trying to do with that new ultimate kind of customization in those different locations?
So this was really our CEO's brainchild. He worked with marketing and we set up a whole project team and it was really kind of crazy. It was super fast. We like to say scrappy, not crappy. And we decided we wanted to have a presence in San Francisco on a really popular street, Fillmore. And then we also wanted to be in New York and do a cool speakeasy vibe. So we looked at those two locations and we did a completely different experience in both, and it proved to be really well. The Fillmore location it's very colorful, bright, big ceilings, like amazing pops of color, and it did really well for us. And actually, Q4 it trafficked the highest out of any store in our brand, and that was like a location. It was marketing. It was really the store experience. And then inside the box, specifically Fillmore, we had customization. So we had a chain stitcher there who was able to customize and chain stitch any of your garments. We also had over 100 different patches that our marketing and design team implemented. You were able to patch garments. So from an experience standpoint, it wasn't just walking into a retail store and like picking out a garment and leaving. It became an experience, and it was pretty wild because it was across like all genders and age, and like people just walked in there and really didn't want to leave. We had a photo booth. We put on a lot of events there, which was really great. So I think from an impression standpoint and acquisition for marketing, it was really good for the brand. And then Nolita in New York was a little bit of a different beast, it's a beautiful speakeasy. If you have a chance to go see it, it would be amazing while you're here. But it's in the basement of our regular store on Nolita in Soho, and it's a beautiful vibe. We have cashmere and all kinds of luxe garments in there that are just really beautiful and like soft to the touch. We did a lot of like press events and marketing events that have just been like gangbusters. So it's just absolutely beautiful and a different way to showcase our brands and get some reach that we wouldn't have had.
You kind of touched on it a little bit, but in these new environments, what were some of those initial kind of, KPIs or really key metrics that you were looking at to try to determine whether or not overall it's success, certain parts are a success, or like what you're trying to change in the future as you expand? What were you kind of focusing on in particular?
Definitely traffic, especially specifically with Fillmore. I mean, we spoke about the traffic; it was unbelievable. But also inside the box, conversion. That told us about staffing. I mean, initially we have small and mighty teams, and we had to basically triple the size of our team within a very short time, realizing what was happening in the box. Also, our average dollar sale was really good and really healthy, especially since we only had soft bottoms. We didn't have a lot of accessories. We just had the patches. So that really gave us an indication of like, as far as inventory, and then also UPT, because of the patches and because of customization, we really had to figure out like that was a UPT driver, obviously, but we also had to figure out our technology and how to integrate that with the experience. So it was pretty amazing.
Kind of along those final lines, as you've been potentially expanding and maybe rolling out this concept in new locations, what do you think is kind of your data-driven approach? How do you think that's given you an advantage over either competing in new markets with, maybe established brands or competing with other digitally native brands as they're trying to expand? How do you think that data-driven approach is kind of giving you the tools you need to make the changes you need to be successful in those markets as well?
It's the real-time data that helps us a lot. I think it's the comparative data. I think your platform integrates really well with all of our other platforms. I also think the fact that we're small and we're super agile, like we can change very quickly. And that's really helped us like for strategy, for envisioning like what the future could look like. I mean, it's the all the data and the analytics, that's the foundation of what we do. So it's been awesome.
Just one final question, just for the future upcoming year, kind of what are your plans? What are you most excited about for Marine Layer in upcoming 2026?
Yeah, well, our volume is growing. We're a little bit north of 200 million. And I think, the last 3 quarters specifically, I'll talk for brick and mortar. We've had double-digit comps. And then we've also grown top line by over 30%. So that's pretty awesome. We want to replicate that, obviously, in 2026. We're also on a mission. We've touched probably 30% of the fleet last year. When I mean touch, we've renovated, remodeled, relocated, or opened new stores. And we're doing the same thing this year. We're excited. We're exploring the outlet business. We haven't outlet business yet, so from a liquidation, but how we show up is really important from a brand standpoint. So we want to make sure that it doesn't look like your everyday outlet, that it's beautiful and there is still a customer experience. And then we're also going to be doing more pop-ups. The success of these two has been unbelievable. And I think whether we turn an existing store into a fun experience or a pop-up, that's great. We're also going to continue with some kind of experience inside the box. We're going to test and learn, and that's what you guys are going to help us with the analytics. But whether it's customization or patching or some kind of unique experience that the customer can walk away with, will be amazing. So that's kind of what's on the roadmap for 2026.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through how the data-driven approach can really help retailers with expanding into new markets and especially planning, new concepts and pop-ups across the country. Thank you.